Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Inspired Learning Project chat. My name is John Clements. I'm principal of Nipmuc Regional High School. I'm joined by my co-principal, Marianne Moran, our Director of Tech Integration, Dave Quinn, and our Assistant Superintendent, Maureen Cohen. This is our little passion project about reimagining school and building a community that's working together to do things a little bit differently in order to build schools that inspire. At the beginning of each of our chats this year, we're going to be featuring some people who are doing the work to reimagine school. This year, we're really excited to have about a 10-minute interview that we will record and post out podcast style on our website. After that, we'll open it up for group conversation. We're excited to make these not only informational and actionable, but a chance to be collaborative and to build a network that's going to support you in the work you do with teachers and schools and kids every single day. So in a moment, we're going to have Dave Quinn kick off the interview with today's guest, Principal of the Year from Massachusetts, Bill Burkhead, Principal of Monomoy High School. We'll let you know that the first 10 minutes or so, the interview will be recorded. But then after that, we'll let you know when the interview comes to an end. We'll stop that recording and give everyone a chance to engage in some open conversation. Throughout the discussion, I encourage everyone to add your thoughts on the chat feature on the side so we have some questions set up and we can follow up with Bill and all of us as the conversation continues. But with that, I'll pass it over to Dave.
Thanks, John. Today we're going to talk about the second most precious resource in schools. The first most precious is obviously our students, our staff, and our administrators. The second being time. And it's the one challenge that a lot of schools are facing or put at the top of their priority list. And today's conversation is going to focus on how we rethink our use of time in order to improve the learning experience. We've got someone with us today who has done just that, Bill Burkhead. Bill, would love to hear more about what's going on at your high school. So can you give us like the 90-second pitch of how Monomoy Regional High School has rethought the use of time in that school?
Well, I think that I'm a big fan of Richard Dufour and his work, and I think what he stated is if you want to intervene or have interventions for students and supports, you have to do it during the school day. That I think we've all had the issue of kids not succeeding in a certain discipline or content area, to invite them after school is not the best way. So what we did is a group of teachers actually came up with the idea, brought it to me. We fleshed it out where we could incorporate intervention time for students who struggled, and also enrichment opportunities for those who were doing well, all in the scheduled day, and we actually did it during our lunch block. So we are a school of 620 students. In effect, we went from having 3 lunches with 5-minute passing time in between and used our time more efficiently with those passing times, and we only had to shave 1 minute of learning time off of each of our 5 classes daily, and we came up with an hour-long, what we call JOSM, because we're the sharks, time where the students have time to have a lot of choices, and those students that aren't doing so well will be assigned academic overtimes or supports with those teachers there in classes they need to. And all 650 kids in our school are released during one lunch. And it's a little intimidating at first, but it kind of flows. There's a lot of freedom with it, a lot of trust with our students. We have high expectations. And what we saw in our anecdotal evidence and also our data is that it worked not only academically. We reduced our students that were failing in courses by 58%. We also, in surveying the teachers, students in home, that the reduced anxiety of our students was over 98%. So I think in having a commerce school in a child with social emotional learning being everyone's interest nowadays, I think that's really been a game changer for us as far as culture in implementing this JOSM program.
Bill, I think what you're talking about is 2 really critical factors. I think there's this aspect of support, right? That the students are feeling that the school is responding to a need that they have. And then also choice, because you've got the enrichment piece for students who may not need that support. It also seems like there would be an opportunity if I no longer needed that academic support, I could go into an enrichment program or enrichment class.
Absolutely, and that's one of the incentives is to, when you're doing well and succeeding in all your courses, that you have opportunities and enrichment opportunities. The other cool thing is the staff embraces it because the staff provide the enrichments, and those are passion passionate things that they like to do. For example, a cappella group, we have an arts group, a jam session where kids and teachers bring in their musical instruments and play. So you name it, we've come up with it here. And I think that's an awesome expectation. But we also, even the kids that are struggling in classes, we make sure that it's not every single day that they're getting, that they have to report to a academic overtime. We make sure that they are also allowed to receive enrichment as well. So we make sure we have a balance for those kids so that they're not going the whole day and kind of feeling like they're being punished, but also they have to have show growth. I think we're all about growth too. It's not about A's and B's necessarily. It's about that student putting in the effort and improving themselves academically for them to earn that enrichment block. And we've seen that works.
So Bill, can you tell me a little bit more about the enrichment offerings that you have, particularly how they're developed? Are they student proposed, teacher proposed? How'd you come up with the alternative classes?
Well, the first year we piloted the program in 2016 in the spring, the teachers came up with the enrichment. So we talked to them about things that they were interested in running for the kids. And again, we had everything from Italian, which we don't offer here, a teacher that wanted to just do that Italian language to go in, and other enrichment blocks, to an AP boot camp for those students that wanted to get more extra help in their AP courses, could come in and get help there in that time. So we had a wide variety. We opened the gym for kids that want to go and play basketball. We have outside opportunities, so there's all kinds of things. What we found after the first year in surveying the kids, because we're really big on getting student voice involved, and we learned that the attendance at all the enrichments weren't as high because they were what the teachers wanted, not necessarily what the kids wanted. So we provided an opportunity so that any student now could come, and we have a document where they have to write up a proposal, meet with me, because we're teaching them life skills that they have to go and pitch their club or their enrichment, and they can run their own. Again, there's a lot of trust. All they need in that way is to convince me that it's a good thing, and that a teacher an adult will oversee it. They don't have to be in the room, and they can run it. So we had, the second year we ran it, we had a lot more enrichment opportunities run by students, and one of the examples is American Sign Language. A couple of the students were trained in that and wanted to teach other students, and they ran with that. And then we've got at least 10 or 12 student-run opportunities. And I'll end with, as principal, it's been one of the best things for me, because every day for that hour, the administrative team are the supervisors. No longer do we have teachers watching kids in the cafeteria. They're in with the kids, working with them or having an enrichment. And the administrators are walking around the school, interacting with kids, sitting with kids, jumping into an enrichment here and there. In fact, I ran my own enrichment bingo with Burkhead, where I played bingo with the kids. So I enjoyed it too. So there's a lot of fun that can be had too.
As you can probably imagine, Bill, there's a lot of interest from the chat. So I'm going to bring in Mike with our first outside question. Mike, you good to go?
Yeah, sorry. I guess, so when you were going through describing the hour, I guess my question was, could you tell us a little bit about your master schedule? What does that look like in terms of periods? I heard 5. And then also just thinking about, like, what are the duties, the assignments for teachers? Because I think this is something that we're trying to do, but we have more of like a recharge period for 20 minutes. And
Right.
We're kind of, going through that process of who's covering that, what's a duty, what's a teaching assignment, and so forth. So can you just expand on that a little bit?
Sure, and I think this is where it was great that it came from the teachers, but it certainly doesn't have to. But I think it's important that they embrace the idea. And what we were able to do is that, in effect, the lunch block or the JOSM hour for an hour, teachers eat their lunch for half the time, and then they are with kids for half that time. What we found is a lot of teachers would just eat with the kids and spend the whole hour there. It was amazing. So I think that was pretty cool. And what we did was, they have, by contract, they have 2 duties per 7-day cycle. So what we did is we said, okay, we'll take those 2 duties and give you them as preparatory time or time to go into colleagues' classrooms or things like that, instead of walking the halls or being at a cafeteria duty or something like that, which I believe is a waste of time, especially if you can establish a culture where you don't need that supervision. And we think we've done that. So that was the give and take, where the teachers appreciated that time, where they could spend more time on preparing their lessons, seeing their colleagues, and not having to do a supervisory duty. And we relieved, I think, 10 or 12 teachers that used to have lunch duty. And now those are 12 people right off the bat. By getting rid of that, they go back in the administrators supervise the lunchroom and other things. Our schedule is a 5-period a day, 7-block drop 2 rotating schedule. So it's pretty complicated. But I think the key of it is all that we did was we took time from our schedule. So we had 5-minute passing time, and we reduced that to 4 minutes because we think the kids can get there. And now that would probably create anarchy or a lot of stress in school for high school kids, because they don't like to get that passing time reduced. But because we provided them with JOSM, they never complained once. They were absolutely willing to sacrifice that time. And then, like I said before, if the 3 lunch blocks that we had, think about 5-minute passing time. We took 10 minutes right there. So right off the bat, we've got 15, 20 minutes a day we're saving. So what we did was we only had to take a minute per teaching block, because I think that was a concern of many people, is that we didn't want to take out a lot of instruction time to do this. So we didn't lose any instruction time, 1 minute, 5 minutes a day, and to gain 30 minutes, and in most cases an hour a day of learning and working. And when you see how it plays out, there's typically 8 to 10 kids in a classroom working with teachers. So it's that connection and those relationships. And I could go on for a long time about anecdotal things that we've seen. Think of your kids that have anxiety, and in the 3 lunch block, they've got that one friend maybe in the whole school that, luck of the draw, they may get scheduled lunch with. We found those kids hiding in bathrooms, hiding in hallways, going down to the guidance office. And now with JOSM, every single day they can meet with that same social group or that same teacher that they connect with. And I think that's been a huge way for us to reduce anxiety in our school and stress levels for kids.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mike.
We've got one more question. Ted McCarthy, come on into the conversation.
Just explain the process for a kid who, maybe one kid who's, all A's and he gets the pick enrichment, how that process works. Is it weekly, monthly? And then maybe another kid who oscillates between needing the extra help and then maybe getting the enrichment.
Sure. So I'll start with the kids with the straight A's. So what we found is those type of kids are doing well in school. So that student, it's a daily choice. So the schedule is posted. They have it access on there. We use Aspen software. They have it on their phones. We post it visually around the school. And so day to day, they've got the freedom to make that choice. So if you're not assigned an academic overtime by a teacher, which is teach kids that aren't doing academically well enough, the teachers give them a physical pass in their hand. Come see me today. If they don't have any of those passes, that means they're doing well. They can go to any enrichment they want. They can come and go. They can drop into one enrichment for 5 minutes and go to another one for 15 minutes. And they can go to the gym or a multitude of things. And so that student has a lot more freedom. But what we found with those type of kids also is that a lot of study groups formed. A lot of those kids may have an AP test or an exam or a report to write. So we found those kids would, meet on stairwells and study together in the library. They'd be all over the place. And these little study groups started forming with students that didn't have to be anywhere, but knew they had high expectations. What we also found was, and why kids were less stressed, is because those kids that are in the arts or drama or work or sports, we found those kids staying up till 1, 2, 3 at night doing homework because of, getting home at 8 at night, eating lunch and then dinner, and then doing their homework, could now do their homework in school. And so that took a big weight off of their plate, and they were able to do so during JOSM. So the student on the other end, for example, that may be failing 2 classes, for example, so 2 or 3 days a week, that student would have to go into that teacher's class. Let's say it's math. They'd get a pass for math. They'd go in, they get some specific support, probably with 2 or 3 other kids. So it's very targeted. And then the goal there, the teacher would work with that student to get the grade up. And once that grade up on those 2 or 3 days would now have freedom of choice. On the other 2 days where they didn't have to go to academic support over time, for example, they'd have the same freedoms as any other kid would. They could go to the gym, they could go to an enrichment. And I'll end with the final thing that's really helped us me as a principal is think about all the times you have to pull kids out for any type of an assembly or any kind of guest speaker coming in. We do all this during JOSM. In fact, at the beginning of the year when I have my town hall meetings with each grade, we do it during JOSM. It's not taking away any instructional time. Without that, I was finding myself pulling kids out for a whole block to meet with them, or if we had a guest speaker, we do it during that time. So, any kind of thing that as a principal you need to get done with a group of students. If I wanted a senior class meeting, for example, or a junior class meeting for the prom to talk about safety and that kind of thing, I'd pull them out during JOSM. And they could bring their lunch or whatever if I needed the whole hour. So it's a lot of flexibility that it gives you in this program.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ted.
Bill, I'm going to give John the last question, but before you go, could you just, I know you have to duck out a little bit early, but after you wrap up John's question, can you just tell us where you're heading, because it's a really great project.
Of course, thank you.
Sure.
John, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, Bill, I think what I love about this is that it went from brainstorming and this big idea to all of a sudden becoming actionable and putting it into place in your school. Can you talk a little bit about the process you went through to go from idea to action?
Of course. So, one teacher came back from a conference, and this is the power of conferences, with one idea, and that she heard that a school in Florida, and the principal is Jane Elsperman, who's was a dynamo down in Florida with a school of about, I think it was 2,000, and she was doing it with a school that big. She showed me the article that Jane had written about it, and it was very intriguing. And my motto is when my teachers bring me some ideas, I always try to find ways to say yes. And right away, I loved the idea. So I also pushed back on her and said, well, go flesh it out, bounce off a few other teachers and put some meat on the bone and come back on how it would fit our school. And so a week or two later, we set up a meeting. She came back with a handful of teachers that were on board. They had come up with some specific ideas of how it would look at our school. I gave some feedback, and then the ball started rolling there. We also set up some student focus groups to listen to what they thought about the program and got their feedback. In the meantime, I was sharing this with our superintendent all along. He'd give his feedback. So the document in the program got all kinds of information and feedback. We got parent feedback. And then finally, the final step before the superintendent and school committee approved it, we had a teacher vote. Because I think if it's something new like that and it's bottom up, we felt very confident that a lot of teachers would want it. But if half the teachers or more weren't embracing it, it was dead in the water. And that's with any new initiative, in my opinion. So we went down there, and the cool thing was that I wasn't presenting to the staff, the teachers were. I sat out in the audience with the staff. The teachers did a great job of presenting the concept, the benefits, the risks. And, we just have a culture here of risk-taking, and that we wanted to try it. So it was 94% of the teachers at that time approved the pilot. We ran the pilot for 3 months, and then we voted on it again, and it went up to 96%. So it was pretty awesome. And then we polled the teachers and the students and the staff, and it was up in the high 90s of everyone that wanted it back. So when you can get your students, staff, administration, and parents up in the high 90s agreeing on anything, even if the sun's out or not, I think it's a success. So I think, that's how we went about bringing it to life. And I think the key to it was getting everyone's voice heard and rolling out a plan that had support before you tried it, and then piloting it. We also, finally, we had a JOSM team comprised of administrators and teachers and kids that would meet bi-weekly to listen to concerns of the program and make adjustments as we ran with it, because nothing's perfect out the gate, and you don't want to wait to the end of the 3 months to kind of fix things. So that group met, and teachers were allowed, students were allowed to give feedback, pro and con, about the program. And we really addressed a lot of the concerns right off the bat with that committee. And when people saw action, that we were working to fix things that they brought to us and they felt heard, it only strengthened it.
It's awesome to hear that. We hear all the time about principals and leaders who kind of lean toward yes and build that guiding coalition. allow teachers to have a voice in guiding it and step to the side. But it's hard work to build that kind of culture. And so to hear the process and the way you did it, valuing student voice and teacher voice, parents, and having that vote is really awesome. I think we're all of us probably looking for ways to kind of replicate that process so we can have our own homegrown ideas that do what Jossam's doing. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Bill, I know you got to run, but where are you headed? I think it's another really fantastic example of the things going on at your school.
Yeah, thank you. Again, a lot of the things happening, a lot of the great things happening here are not my idea. And I think that's the cool thing. I think my job is to kind of create that culture where people bring great ideas and I listen and we get them off the ground. Some fail and some work. And the ones that work are outstanding. And this is another example. This was in our first year. We're 5 years old as a regional school now. And I was the first principal here. And it's a brand new building, beautiful place. But we brought two school communities, Harwich and Chatham, under one roof. It was called Monomoy. And we talked a lot about creating new traditions and as Monomoy. Because when you bring two schools together that were rivals, you have a lot of this is how we've done it here, this is how we've done it here. So my motto right out the gate was, well, how are we going to do it as Monomoy? And one of the great traditions that's still happening here and that happened that first year was our commitment to community. So our students and teachers came up with the idea of having a Thanksgiving meal for our senior citizens in the community. And what that has transpired into is that the students lead the project along with a couple of dynamic teachers where they have to go out and get donations for the food from local community, Stop and Shop, Shaw's, those type of places. Get the food, the students organize it, they work with the teachers to advertise and so that the senior citizens can sign up and take part. It's free for everybody. And I was blown away that first year when we had over 100 participants come. We also play music. The kids play music. We have some of our teachers come down and play some jazz. It's a really, they make the cafeteria into like a dining room. It's beautiful, like you were at home. And it's our home away from home philosophy that kind of just is seen within this project. And what happens there is that the students serve the senior citizens, but they also sit and eat with them. They interact. I go down and hang out. The teachers are welcome to come down. The students also offer tours of our building with the senior citizens that have not been in our school or would like to see it. And what those turn into are conversations about our school and what's going on. They're not tours led by me. They're led by, our students. So it's a really awesome, tradition. And now in year 5, we've got some folks that have come all 5 years, and we've got new folks every year. We're averaging, like I said, over 100 community members. And I think what's important to us is those community members' first impression of your school is something of this magnitude and something offered by our kids. They go out into the community, and first of all, they're taxpayers, and they appreciate where their money is being spent on the facility and the education of our kids, but also that we're giving back and making partnerships. I think that's a good PR for our school. And all it takes is a bunch of kids that are dedicated and some dynamic teachers to run with it.
Bill, thanks again for your time. So this concludes the first of many interviews. Thanks for kicking us off, Bill. The Inspired Learning Project interview will be back on December 6th at 8 o'clock. We hope those of you who are listening on our blog will join us live then. But for the Inspired Learning Project, Maureen, Marianne, and John, I'm Dave Quinn. Thanks for joining us.